Hello everyone, let me start by saying this isn't a story about a thief. It's a story about a choice, a desperate choice made out of love and fear, and the blurred line between what's right and what's necessary. This all began with my father, a man I loved more than anything, and the demon that was slowly, but surely, taking him away from me. My father, David, was once the strongest person I knew. He was a carpenter, a craftsman with hands that could build anything from a sturdy oak table to a beautiful rocking chair. His laughter was a warm, booming sound that filled our small house, and his eyes, a gentle blue, always held a kind of quiet strength. We weren't rich, but we were happy. He taught me to fish, to build things with my hands, and to always stand up for what's right. He was my hero. But then, the drinking started. It wasn't a sudden storm, it was a slow, creeping fog that rolled into our lives. It began with a beer, after a long day of work, then a few more on the weekends. Soon, it was a constant companion. The laughter became rarer, replaced by a sullen silence, or, worse, a belligerent rage. The gentle blue in his eyes was often clouded and distant. He started missing days of work. His hands, once so steady and skilled, now shook with a tremor. That made his craft impossible. I watched him lose himself, day by day. His friends stopped coming around, his tools gathered dust, and the money he earned was no longer going towards food or bills. It was all going to alcohol. My mother and I tried everything. We talked to him, we begged him, we even tried hiding the car keys, but nothing worked. The demon had a tight grip on him, and we were powerless to break it. The house, once full of warmth and joy, became a cold and quiet place, filled with the constant fear of when he would come home, or what state he would be in. The final straw came on a cold Tuesday night. He had received his paycheck, and I knew he was going to spend it all at the Rusty Nail, a local dive bar he frequented. My mother had already left for her second job, a night shift at the local diner, trying to make ends meet. I was alone, sitting at the kitchen table, looking at the bills that were piling up on the counter, the electricity bill, the phone bill, and the letter from the landlord that threatened eviction. The weight of it all was crushing me. I looked out the window and saw my father's old pickup truck pull out of the driveway. I knew where he was going, and I knew that by the time he came back, the money would be gone, and with it, our last hope of keeping a roof over our heads. A desperate idea, a terrible idea started to form in my mind. It was a choice I never thought I would have to make, a violation of trust that went against everything he had taught me. But what was the alternative? To watch us lose everything. To watch him lose himself completely. I had to do something, anything, to stop it. It was a terrible thought, but it was all I had left. So, with a racing heart and trembling hands, I went to his room. Knowing that I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. I was about to become a thief, but I was also trying to be a savior. The moment I made the decision, a knot of dread formed in my stomach. I crept into my father's room, a space that was once a sanctuary of his hobbies and peaceful sleep, but now felt like a stranger's den. On his nightstand, tucked under a book of crossword puzzles, he no longer had the patience for, was his old worn leather wallet. It smelled faintly of sawdust and the cologne he used to wear on Sundays. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Pulling out the cash felt like a profound betrayal. It was a thick wad of bills, his entire weekly paycheck. I counted it quickly, my heart pounding in my ears. I took exactly what was needed to cover the essential bills, the electricity, the phone, and just enough for some groceries. The rest, a much smaller amount, I left tucked inside the wallet. I wanted to believe I was saving him, not stealing from him. It was a fine line I was trying to walk, and every step felt like a lie. After putting the wallet back, I retreated to my room, the stolen money clenched in my fist. I felt a confusing mix of relief and shame. I had secured our survival for another month, but I had done it by violating my father's trust. I sat on my bed, staring at the bills, feeling like a thief. I was a son, not a criminal, but the line between the two felt impossibly thin. Hours later, I heard his truck pull into the driveway. My body tensed. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable. The front door opened and closed with a loud bang, and I heard his heavy shuffling steps. He was home, and he was clearly not sober. But unlike other nights, there was no loud singing or angry shouting. There was just a confused, slurring monologue followed by a period of unsettling silence. I didn't hear him leave for the bar again, which was a small mercy. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was quiet. I crept out of my room and saw him in the kitchen, sitting at the table, his head in his hands. The silence was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence than before. This was a silence of confusion and dawning realization. "Son," he said, his voice hoarse, did you take my wallet?" My heart stopped. I had planned to say no, to lie and deny everything, but looking at his face, the raw pain and confusion in his eyes, I couldn't. The words got stuck in my throat. I just shook my head, unable to meet his gaze. He stood up, his gaze searching my face, his voice rising in disbelief. "I had my paycheck last night. It was all there. I was going to pay the bills, and now, it's almost all gone." I just ... I don't understand. He wasn't angry, not yet. He was heartbroken. He thought he had misplaced it, or that maybe someone had broken in. He was looking at me, his own son, not with suspicion, but with a plea for help. He was lost, and I was the one who had put him there. The lie was eating me alive. I had to choose, continue the lie to protect our family, or tell the truth and break his heart all over again. I stood there, frozen, the stolen money still tucked away in my room. My father's confusion was far more painful to witness than his anger would have been. He wasn't accusing me. He was looking to me for answers, for help, and I was the one who had created this problem. The lie was a suffocating weight on my chest, and I knew I couldn't carry it any longer. Dad, I started, my voice a shaky whisper. It was me. I took the money. His face, already pale and drawn, seemed to lose all color. The quiet confusion turned into a look of profound gut-wrenching betrayal. It was a look I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He just slowly sank back into his chair, looking at me as if he was seeing a complete stranger. Why? He finally managed to say the word, a simple, hollow sound. Why would you do that? I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. The bills, Dad, they were all piling up. The landlord sent another notice. Mom's working 2 jobs. You were going to spend it all at the bar. We were going to lose everything. I was trying to save us. The words tumbled out, a messy, desperate confession. But as I said them, I saw something shift in his eyes. The pain was still there, but a flicker of something else appeared, a spark of understanding. Or maybe just a cold, hard dose of reality. He looked around the kitchen, at the stack of bills, at the empty refrigerator, at the worn-out furniture. For a moment, he seemed to see our lives not through the bottom of a bottle, but through my eyes. He sat there for what felt like an eternity, his silence more powerful than any shouting could have been. I couldn't look at him. I stared at my hands, which were now shaking uncontrollably. I had confessed, but I didn't feel any relief. I just felt the immense, crushing weight of what I had done. I had traded his trust for our survival, and I didn't know if it was a fair trade. Finally, he spoke. His voice was no longer filled with confusion, but with a quiet, devastating finality. I see, he said, and the words hung in the air like a death sentence. So you stole from me to save me. I didn't have an answer. There was no answer to that. He just stood up, slowly, and walked out of the room. He didn't go to the bar. He didn't yell at me. He just left. He walked out the front door and disappeared down the street, leaving me alone in the silent, empty house. I had saved the bills, but I had lost my father. The demon had been outsmarted, but it had left a deep and painful wound in its wake. The story of my father's drinking was no longer a silent, creeping fog. It was a loud, painful confrontation, and the fallout was just beginning. The next few days were a blur of silence and worry. My father didn't come back. The house, which had been quiet before, was now a cavern of empty space and hushed anxiety. My mother, returning from her late-night shift, found me sitting on the porch, my face stained with tears. When I told her everything, the theft, the bills, the confession, and his sudden departure, she didn't get angry. She just sat down next to me and held my hand. You did what you had to do, she said, her voice filled with a weary understanding. You were trying to save us all, but now, we have to save him. The police were no help. They said an adult had the right to leave their home, and that unless we could prove he was in danger, they couldn't do anything. We called his friends, his old co-workers, and even the Rusty Nail, but no one had seen him. The fear that he had relapsed, that he was drinking himself into oblivion somewhere, was a constant, gnawing pain in my gut. I had tried to save him from himself, but in doing so, I had driven him away. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. The silence was finally broken by a phone call a few days later. It was my father's old friend, an ex-carpenter named Tom. He's at my place, Tom said, his voice quiet. He's not drinking. He's been here, in my workshop, just ... sitting. He won't talk to me. He just sits and stares at the wall. I think you need to come and talk to him. He needs to hear it from you. My heart leaped with a desperate mixture of hope and fear. I drove to Tom's house, a small cluttered place filled with the familiar smell of sawdust and varnish. I found my father in the workshop, sitting on an overturned bucket, surrounded by old tools. He wasn't drinking, he was just ... there. He looked up at me as I walked in, his eyes still holding that same look of betrayal. But now, it was mixed with a profound sense of exhaustion. I sat down on a box across from him, the silence stretching between us like a physical thing. I didn't know what to say. I had prepared a speech, a desperate plea for forgiveness, but the words felt hollow and pointless. He spoke first. I went to the bar that night, he said, his voice raspy and low. I was on my way there, but I couldn't do it. I kept thinking about you, about your mother, about the bills, about what you said. He paused, a deep, shaky breath filling the air. I felt the money in my pocket, and I wanted to go. But then I remembered your face, the look on your face when you confessed. You weren't a thief. You were a son. trying to do the right thing. And it hit me. I had forced you into a position where you had to choose between my trust and my family's survival, and that's not something a father should ever do to his son. My eyes welled up with tears. He wasn't mad at me. He was mad at himself. He saw what his addiction had made him, and what it had forced me to become. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the pain he had caused, and the way he had broken our family. He had finally seen the truth, and it had hit him harder than any confrontation could have. The silence in that workshop felt different now. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a lie. It was a quiet space for healing and understanding. My father wasn't angry with me. He was angry at himself, and that was the first step toward getting better. He looked at me, his eyes now filled not with betrayal, but with a deep, crushing sorrow. "I'm sorry, son," he said, the words catching in his throat. "I'm so sorry for what I put you through. I never wanted you to have to do something like that. I lost my way. I lost myself. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I'm sorry, too, Dad," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I should have just talked to you. I should have found a better way." He shook his head. "No, you did what you had to do. You were a man when I wasn't, and for that, I'm proud of you." Those words, "I'm proud of you," meant more to me than any apology. They were an admission of his own failure, but also a recognition of my love for him. They were the first step on a long and difficult path to recovery. We stayed in that workshop for hours, just talking. He told me about the pain he was feeling, the reasons he started drinking, and I told him about the fear, the worry, and the love that had driven me to steal his money. It was a raw, honest, and painful conversation, but it was exactly what we needed. We weren't just father and son anymore. We were two people who were trying to understand each other and find a way back to a normal life. We eventually drove home together, the silent ride feeling different from the last. My mother was waiting for us on the porch, her face filled with relief and tears. We hugged, all three of us, in a long, messy, and emotional embrace. We were broken, but we were together. The next few weeks were not easy. My father started going to AA meetings. He started working again, his skilled hands slowly regaining their old confidence. He never drank again. He never forgot what I had done, and I never forgot what he had said to me in that workshop. The money I had taken was used to pay the bills, and with the first money he made from his new projects, he paid me back, not in cash, but in a small, handmade wooden box he had crafted himself. "This is for the money you saved us," he said. "It's a reminder of a lesson we both had to learn." The box sat on my nightstand, a symbol of our shared struggle and our ultimate reconciliation. It was a reminder that sometimes, the hardest choices are made out of love, and that forgiveness, both for others and for ourselves, is the only way to heal. My father was no longer my hero. He was just my dad, a man who made a mistake and was brave enough to fix it. And I was no longer a thief. I was his son, a son who had to do the wrong thing to do the right thing. And that's our story. A story about a father, a son, and a stolen paycheck that ultimately saved a family. Thank you for listening. And until next time, take care.